Their lyrics tell a story about 150 high school kids from Long Beach, California, who call themselves freedom riders, and the teacher who changed them from teenagers without hope into students with dreams. Just 4 years ago, Darius was fresh out of jail and living on the streets. Maria was in a tough gang, and her close friend was on trial for murder. Jaime started bringing a gun to school after his friend was killed in a drive-by. They came from a world ruled by violence, not education. Their journey began, oddly enough, with an ugly prank in the classroom. Sherrod Moore was the class bully. Aaron Gurrell was just 23 years old, a brand new teacher with no idea how to deal with the student from hell.
Here he saw this preppy student teacher, and every day he would just do ruthless things to get the class laughing, or just really to disrupt the class.
I was like, I'm going to make this thing cry in front of the whole classroom. That was my goal.
But the tables turned quickly when it was Sherrod who became the target of a racial slur. One day in Aaron Gurrell's class, somebody started passing a note around, and this was it. It was a picture. Do you remember?
Oh, is that the picture? Oh, yeah, that was the picture.
It had actually circulated the classroom a picture of this young man with really crude, exaggerated lips.
I snatched it and I looked at it and I almost cried.
And it reminded me of a drawing that I had seen where the Nazi propaganda artist had drawn Jews looking like rats with a really exaggerated nose looking like a rat. So what I did is I started yelling and screaming, and I said, this note reminds me of the Holocaust. And I'll never forget it. A kid very timidly raised his hand and said, Miss Gurrell, what's the Holocaust?
Gurrell was stunned at the possibility that her students had never heard of one of the most horrifying events in human history. She searched her mind for some way to reach these kids.
And I said, okay, how many of you have been shot at? Every single kid raised their hand. And not only did they raise their hand, they started pulling up their shirts and saying, well, this is where I almost got hit, or this is where I got knifed. And it became this really exciting moment where the kids were sharing their war stories.
Stories about seeing friends die, about going hungry, about being beaten down. On the tough streets on the east side of Long Beach, they were struggling with their own nightmares. The young teacher knew she had hit a raw nerve. This was the key she would use to unlock their minds. She took them to see the film Schindler's List and to the Simon Wiesenthal Museum of Tolerance, where they saw human hatred in graphic detail. Can you relate your life to the Holocaust?
I could see the pain of thousands and thousands of people dying because of the way they live or because of their religion. And I can compare it to the gang violence that's going on in our city.
The students began to see how the small seed of hatred in a racist note could grow and multiply with tragic results.
You can take history and relate it to something that's going on in the present. And that's the beauty of it.
We went to the museum as this very haphazard, eclectic group, and when we left, we were a family. Camaraderie, the unity in this room, we have camaraderie.
She decided it was time for this family to make a pledge. She called it the Toast for Change.
And she's just like, oh, you know, I need all you guys to get up and get in a circle, and you guys have to hold hands, and we have to toast for change. That from this day on, we don't care what you did before, the grades you have, it doesn't matter, we don't care. This day, you're like born again.
And something happened as we're standing around, everyone's holding their hands, and they're 15 years old. Kids started crying.
I guess I wanted to change, I just didn't know how.
Up until that moment, the future for Maria was just a painful repetition of the past. When you were 11 or 12 years old, did you think you had a future?
No. I just thought I was going to get pregnant and have kids.
They ended up killing each other.
Like Maria, Darius had decided by the age of 14 that life was a dead end. Did you think you were going to die young?
I kind of knew I was.
By the time he landed in Aaron Gurrell's classroom in 1995, he had lost his father to AIDS and seen more than 24 friends cut down by gunfire.
Right there at the stop sign is where most people get killed.
3 years ago, Darius was released from juvenile jail and brought to Woodrow Wilson High. He had been in and out of many schools before and had no reason to expect that this one would be any different. Woodrow Wilson is typical of any urban high school. Students of every race and economic background. Racial tension often evident. a mixture of high achievers and flunkies. But behind this door in room 203, anything but a typical class was evolving.
One teacher's expectations. I got to meet her and take her to the Kansas City airport.
Music and
really
rap,
cool.
To what she wants to teach them. Here's a lesson on poetry and rhyme.
And then me, one time she said money, honey, so it's that internal rhyme. Whereas the other one, erased it, was the external, okay?
She teaches them new vocabulary words by playing bingo with Fruit Loops.
Assimilate. Yeah.
She even related Shakespeare to their inner city lines.
We were doing Romeo and Juliet, and it was like, you know, their families, they were like against each other, and it was kind of like a gang kind of a thing.
Ms. Gurel put aside the old textbooks.
When she like threw the books away, she said, get your books, get all your English books, and like stack them against the wall.
And brought in new books about teenagers surrounded by violence. She launched a readathon.
Throughout the day, it became this contest. The kid would come back and announce, Miss Gurel, I'm on page 25, or I'm on page 30.
And they didn't just read the books, they brought them to life. When they finished reading the Diary of Anne Frank, Gurel brought in a Holocaust survivor.
And then, like, we met a survivor. That was, it was so overwhelming. Because, like, someone had been there. Everyone was crying. It was amazing.
No book had ever affected me more than the Anne Frank diary, you know.
It is like the sunshine.
Ms. Gurel's contemporary English class was becoming so popular, even honor roll students like Sean Burrows, a star baseball player, couldn't wait to get in.
Most teachers want to go like how they want to teach, and just you have to follow their plan. It's really with her, she like talks to us and asks us like how we want to learn, you know, and then she goes from there.
Erin Gurel and her students were on a roll, but her way of teaching with the new books and special outings was costing money.
So her confidant became her diary. For some of you, your confidant is this computer.
The students knew that they had to begin writing their own diaries, their own stories. It's 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, but on any given night, these kids are no longer roaming the streets. They're in Ms. Gurel's classroom writing.
These type of struggles that I think are what holds the common barrier that we both must overcome.
I like that line. A word, and I jack that line.
Because of the sensitive nature of their stories, they write anonymously.
He's dead, my friend cried. I couldn't believe it. You're not even my real father, I thought in my mind as he continued swinging the belt.
God, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in 4 days. It's so horrible.
I remember when I was out smoking with my homies, and the cops rolled up. Boy, did I take off. He showed it to me. It was a 22 with bullets and a clip.
The new authors bound their troubled lives in a book and christened themselves Freedom Writers, after watching a video about the Freedom Riders who fought for equal rights in America's segregated South. Like the Freedom Riders, they traveled to Washington, D.C. for the biggest field trip yet. There they presented a copy of their diaries to Education Secretary Richard Riley. Then on to New York City, where they received a tribute they had never dreamed of, the Spirit of Anne Frank Award.
And how proud I am to be part of the human race looking at ya. Good for you.
Carl Cohn, superintendent of Long Beach Schools, knows that despite the success stories, there are critics who say Ms. Gurel's not teaching enough of the basics. But he thinks she's teaching something more.
Plato, Aristotle, all the great teachers of the world, all of their students said that they taught about life.
I had a metamorphosis because I changed my whole way of thinking.
If grades are any indication, Gurel's method seems to be working. Many of the Freedom Riders have raised their grades in all their classes from D's and F's to A's and B's.
Are you going to graduate?
And listen to their career goals.
I want to become a lawyer. I want to graduate from law school at Harvard.
I want to be a teacher.
Filmmaker.
I would like to become a pathologist.
Darius wants to work in the music business. Dulce wants to be an aeronautical engineer. And Bunny, an English teacher. How do your parents feel about who you are today?
They're very, very proud of me. And they were talking to their friends. They told them how proud they were of me. And I've never heard them say that before.
What is the greatest gift that Miss Gurel gave you?
a second chance. A second chance to make my life better.
She said a second chance. Why does that make you cry?
When you look at these kids, they're 16 years old. And to feel hopeless at 16, it's such a tragedy. And so many kids do.
I'm gonna be the first in my family to graduate. My mom, you should see, she's so proud of me.
In June, they will graduate, and every one of these students plans to go to college. They can't contain their emotions as they reflect on the 4 years they've spent with this extraordinary teacher.
I think about, like, all the things that, like, this girl had helped me with and where I came from. I mean, I could be somewhere in a cell right now because I didn't have a life.
Years ago, they made a toast to change, and today, with sparkling apple juice in hand, they toast success.
This toast is to announce that we have an official book deal. Our book is going to get published.
And of course, now there's a movie that's been made of it. Probably a lot of you saw.
Teenagers without hope, but now they are authors with big dreams.
Just like Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. That's what I try to do, you know, just be true to myself and be true to what I'm talking about. And that's why I'm leading a positive life, and I'm seeing a more positive way.
Started with one teacher's expectations.
Success and fulfillment, and he is here to explain how all that happens. Good to have you back with us.
Thank you.
Let me take an experiment here, and let me turn to the audience, because I know when you speak to crowds, you ask them a question, and you ask them to hold up their hand if they can think of someone in their lives who believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. Can you do that? How many of you would say there was someone who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself? Now, there's an interesting hook to that question when you ask it, it seems to me, which is the sort of assumption that people don't believe in themselves. True?
Often they've had so many negative experiences that they don't, and that's why someone that affirms them deeply can really help them find their voice.
But that gets to what you're saying, I think, in this book, which is that it doesn't necessarily need to come from outside, that self-belief. It needs to come from inside.
Exactly. And that's the source of one's power. It comes from your integrity toward your own value system.
Do most people, though, in their heart, in their gut, believe in themselves? Can they do that?
Oh, absolutely. And particularly when they're affirmed by someone who that they have confidence in. And that just, it seeps into them. And they'll never forget it. It's a defining moment in their life.
You call it the voice.
Right.
Which has a lot of components.
It does.